Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Weekly Puck Off, brought to you by Colt 45 and TAC! That's right, Boudreezy's not here. I think he's still asleep on the back of the Metro Transit, but we'll get to that a little later in the podcast. I'm sure he's okay, but Coach Connor's here too, and we're ready to go! Woo! Hey!
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Alright, there's the balloons are still in here too.
Yeah.
Party time.
Okay. So as you might be able to tell by the current audio, I'm just holding the phone up to the speaker again because the Bluetooth speaker we typically use is not only broken, but it's also Boudreezy's and he's not here. So today's pod, as I gradually fade out the intro music, today's pod is brought to you by the balloons that have been in here for about a month, and I'm not really sure why.
They're still holding air.
High quality.
Yeah.
So we figured we don't want to leave all of our fans hanging. We were going to record the podcast. Boudreezy was supposed to be here today. Work commitments came up. And believe it or not, we put our careers before the Weekly Puck Off. That is the one thing we prioritize more than this podcast. So we got a couple of very knowledgeable people in here with me today. Coach Connor, who's here most weeks.
Hello.
And Tack, who is also here most weeks.
Hi.
Instead of Tack Attack, he's going to be the Boudreezy of the day. So, I guess let's get the ball rolling here.
Here we go.
Sorry, Tack, I didn't mean to offend you, but...
No offense taken. I know it's big shoes to fill.
Yeah, so another one, part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast today instead of putting it off till next week, other than of course being loyal to our dedicated viewers, is to talk about the Paul McLean news while it's still somewhat relevant. Because as a Sens fan, I feel like this one kind of hurts a bit. I was a fan of McLean, but I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it and get a bit of a discussion going.
Well, Pollers is always good for a few sound bites.
Yeah.
Even after he got fired, he had a great one.
Yeah, he was quoting
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Yeah, he's gonna shake it off.
Yeah.
That was good.
But I was a little bit surprised. I think you were probably more surprised
I was definitely
than anyone.
I mean, I knew in the off-season there was a bit of murmurings that the players weren't quite buying into the system anymore. But once they came out and started off, I mean, they started off great. They've gone on a bit of a skid, losing 4 of their last 5. But
Since the TAC jersey bet.
since the TAC jersey bet, and all those games were on the road that they lost.
It is a curse.
So, I don't know, and they're 500. They're a 500 hockey club, which is pretty good considering the only way they're really going to make the playoffs is if they stick to their system and get some shots on goal and hope for the best. Like, that's kind of what I've been saying all year. I think they could make the playoffs if they stick strictly to their system and win games 2-1 kind of thing. And McLean was good at implementing that sort of system. Now that he's gone, I don't really know what to expect out of the team. I'm almost hoping at this point that they tank for McDavid.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
I
Now,
think
isn't it a dishonor for Connor?
That's good.
people were saying that's what Buffalo should do, but it's looking like Buffalo's only 1 win behind Ottawa.
Yeah.
Ottawa has a couple more points because they're great at losing in overtime. But
The Oilers have 6 wins, don't
yeah,
they?
the Oilers are last
They
by...
may have 7 now, I think.
Yeah.
I think they might be 7-17.
They're last by a pretty good chunk, and I thought Buffalo at this point would have like 1 win, and they've got 10.
Looking
So-
like
Looking
I
like
got some money coming to me.
looking like a Coach Connor sweep on the... I bet Connor that Buffalo would not win more than 15 games this year, and they're only 5 away from proving me wrong with 55 to play. So we're going to see how that goes for me. If they can get like a 9% win record, I win. Which is where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd win maybe 10, 11 games all year, but they've already passed that. So it's not looking good, but there's always a chance because their Fenwick is still abysmal. So anyway, Ottawa, your guys' thoughts? I'm biased. I don't think there's any way they're making the playoffs anymore.
No, me neither.
I was clinging on to that slight faint hope just because of the way McLean coaches those guys. I'm kind of past the point of believing now, and I'm just hoping for a good pick. But do you guys think there's any hope in hell that Ottawa can improve with the new coach?
I think there's a chance. From what I'd heard, and I'm not a huge Ottawa fan, so you may know better than I, but I'd heard that the players kind of weren't all that keen on Paul, that he was too hard on them. And when the players weren't performing, he was benching them, and some of the Millionaire Club players just weren't really happy with that. I also heard that Brian Murray kind of had a difference in philosophies than Paul McLean did. So if that's the case, if the players weren't so happy with him being gone, it might sort of be like a breath of fresh air to them. They might be performing better just because of that, or it could go the other way. I mean, if Cameron is trying to do things the opposite way and is a player-friendly coach, then he might not be able to motivate them as much.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just time will tell, but it's hard,
I
hard
don't know. I think the players have to man up. Like you're getting paid to do your job, and your job is to follow the system that your coach puts in place.
Yeah.
And whether you like him or not, you're playing for that team. You're trying to win games for that hockey club. I don't care if you're getting called out. Maybe you should play better. Like
Yeah.
Karlsson, play defense. Like you're one of the best players in the league. Don't get me wrong, but play defense. That's what he's telling you to do. Go out there and do it. You're the leader of this team. Act like it. Kyle Turris is underperforming, and I'm sure he's one of the guys who was getting called out. He's on pace for, I don't even think he's on pace for 50 points right now. Was he got 14 points in 27 games or something similar?
I don't know. How's Bobby Ryan doing? I don't pay any attention.
He's battling a couple finger issues.
Oh, yeah.
He fractured his finger, and he's been shuffled around with so many different line mates because McLean couldn't find a good match for him. They finally had a great game. Him and Zibanejad playing with Mike Hoffman. It looked really good, and then McLean got fired. So Dave Cameron, the new coach, the assistant who's stepping up now, he said he plans on leaving all the lines the same for the time being on how they were the last time they won, which was when they played Vancouver, and they don't actually play again until, is today Thursday?
They play today.
They play tonight against the LA Kings at home.
Get ready for a butt whooping.
That's going to be a tough one.
This will be LA coming off a big loss against Buffalo though, so who knows?
I'm not putting Anderson in my fantasy tonight. I'm not playing him.
Keeping him off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Leonard starts.
Yeah, me neither.
Is he healthy? Is he ready to
No,
go?
he's injured. Yeah, Anderson's starting.
Yeah, all right.
Not
Yeah,
playing.
Leonard. They activated him off IR yesterday, but I don't know if they want to jump him right back into playing yet.
Okay, so
But
Anderson's
he
probably
has-
starting, maybe not finishing.
He's not starting. He's not starting for me.
If there's one guy on the team who has been consistent all year, it's been Craig Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
one.
Or
And if there's
he
one guy,
saved their skin a few times.
if there's one
More
guy
than a
you
few
want to
times.
be counting on, it is your goalie. If your number one goalie is elite, then that's the only way that Ottawa can really continue to win games and maybe be a playoff team, is if Anderson stands on his head like he did in 2012.
Mhm.
I think Boudreasy would say CC as well.
Yeah, Cody Ceci.
He'll be
Who
the
has-
difference maker tonight.
Oh,
He
yeah.
has actually been a little better than I thought he would be.
What was he at, like 9 or 10 points?
He's got 8 points,
8
but he's not he doesn't get the big minutes on the power play or anything like. It's
No.
pretty much the Karlsson show on the power play.
Well, yeah.
If you watch the Ottawa Senators play, Karlsson's out there for about 1 minute and 40 seconds out of the 2-minute power play. They give him a 20-second rest, and then after the whistle, they get him back out. The game plan is get the puck to Karlsson and let him shoot it when he has an open lane, and then see if someone can tip it in.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how they run the power play. And Karlsson, when they played Vancouver, I believe it was 22 was the number of pucks he directed towards the net.
Wow.
8 shots on goal, and
Do you think he'll
14
be?
were either blocked or wide.
Do you think he'll be the leading defenseman in the league again?
In points,
Yeah.
I think he needs some supporting cast first. I think he has some work to do to catch Hedman. Hedman's behind him in points, but Hedman is on a much faster pace. Because he missed about, 10, 12 games there?
And Giordano's already
Yeah.
pointing
Giordano,
pace.
yeah.
He's got 27, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting point, actually. A shout out to the Keeping Karlsson podcast. I tune into those guys quite a bit. And one of them mentioned Giordano's actually, he should be declining at this age. He's over 30. Well, he never emerged until late. He went undrafted. But most players, once they hit 30, start to decline. So for him to have a breakout year in his 30s, be a little bit cautious of him in a keeper pool, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket with the 31-year-old defenseman.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would have to say about the Karlsson versus Giordano saga.
Yeah, I'm even surprised that he's had 2 good seasons back to back, Giordano.
And he's looked extremely good. He doesn't look like he's slowing down at all.
No. I think he's gonna have a big season.
For this year, I could definitely see him winning the points race of defensemen.
Yeah.
Because Karlsson, he can't do the whole thing himself. He's the only star player Ottawa has left. And, one guy can't win you games.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's probably enough about the Sens. I just wanted to have that on today's podcast before it was yesterday's news, because next week it'd be on with Dave Cameron going on a 5-game winning streak or something.
Or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, or a 5-game losing streak.
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
probably
tune in next week and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So I think we were supposed to have Noggs on the show today, the fact guy. Unfortunately, he is, I think, giving blood.
He's giving
yeah,
blood.
he's the financial institution that will go unnamed. I'll pull the Boudreasy. We do this podcast in the place of employ of a financial institution, which will go unnamed. We're doing a blood drive, so there's a bunch of them giving blood right now. I was ineligible because I went down south, and I didn't find out until I went through the whole screening process. Got my blood taken, checked my iron levels, did the survey that asked me if I had sex with monkeys in the past 6 months. I didn't do any of those things, but since I went to Dominican, they thought I had malaria
He's got malaria in his colon.
in the colon.
In the colon.
I could feel it all the way down to my plums. If we had the sound bites, I would play that.
Perfect.
So, either of you guys have anything that we should segue into? Because usually Steve's the guy that transitions our schedule.
Well, it depends what we're talking about.
We're talking about hockey. No more colon or plums.
Okay, that makes sense.
Colon plums.
Well, why don't we talk about my Red Wings? And,
Yes. They
so-
are number one in the East, are they still?
number 1 in the East. They're 1 point up on Tampa Bay now.
Jeez.
Rough loss last night.
Very rough loss. Reimer definitely stole the show.
Hmm.
The Wings outplayed them in just about every facet you can imagine,
Oh,
other than
absolutely.
goaltending. And Howard wasn't even all that bad.
Howard played well. He only faced 19 shots, including
yeah.
the overtime.
Yeah.
And Detroit, I watched that game last night. I took some notes because I was noticing the exact same thing you just said. Leafs were outshot 42-19 and still won. So
Yeah, that's-
Leafs fans, be cautious because those numbers are actually worse than Buffalo most games. But, I mean, they pulled off the win. Reimer looked great.
They got it.
Now the question is, who do they go with next game? Do they go back to their old Bernier-Reimer flip-flop and go 50-50? Or I think they should go back to Bernier. He's been good for them over the last 10 games or so. He's been fairly consistent. Started 9 straight and didn't get shelled at all.
Mhm.
Now Reimer comes in and posts his best start of the year. This is kind of the story of the last 2 or 3 years for the Leafs where they
Yeah.
can't decide on a starter.
Mhm.
What do you guys think?
I think, like you said, go back to Bernier, go back to their main guy. What surprised me and impressed me about Reimer, too, is that he hadn't played since November 18th. So that was like almost a 1-month
Yeah.
stretch. And that last game that he played, it was against, he didn't start that game, but it was that game with Nashville when the Leafs got shellacked 9-2.
The 9-2.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Bernier let in 3 goals in the first. They took him out. Reimer was put in, and he let in 6 goals. And the game before that, Reimer started it, and they were playing against Buffalo, and Buffalo scored 6 goals on them there too.
Jeez.
So Reimer had 2 games back to back where he
12
let in
goals.
6 goals each. Didn't play for like 20 something days. Comes in against in my unbiased opinion, a top team in the Red Wings, and played phenomenally. Like good for that guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the chance to look up the Corsi chart for that game, but I'm going to say there was at least twice as many scoring chances for the Wings. Most of the game was Toronto flipping the puck out to center ice and trying to quickly change before the Red Wings came back into their zone.
And so many times the Wings came into the zone uncontested. Like whether it was like on a partial breakaway, but like the Leafs just could not clog up that blue line. Their defensive or their neutral zone play was completely awful, and the Wings just kept on plowing through, getting opportunities, shot after shot after shot. And
There was
Reimer
only-
shut the door.
There was one thing I noticed. Phaneuf looked really good. There was one shift where he was a pylon, but a lot of people look like pylons when Datsuk has the puck.
That's
He
very
he
true.
did a little dangle and drove wide around Phaneuf and ended up with a scoring chance, drew a penalty. Phaneuf got the slashing penalty. But he was very physical out there. I don't know how many hits he threw. Again, we don't do research here. But he had several nice plays along the boards where he just completely outmuscled the Wings players and cleared the zone. So if there's one guy other than Reimer who I thought had a good game there, it was Dion.
Yeah, and
Double Dion!
the double Dion.
We need to get that on the soundboard.
That'd be a good one. We gotta get that.
Yeah,
Pierre Maguire just screaming.
Yeah.
but the Leafs, they seem like a different team now.
They do, and if
They're
Noggle was
on.
here, I'm sure he'd have a good little segment about the Leafs right now.
Oh yeah.
His Gilmore jersey came in. He ordered a Gilmore jersey, and he's been wearing it at the
all,
office
all the time, downtown
It's
to
getting
the
out.
office.
It's getting out of hand. Like you got to put it on the hanger.
Yeah.
You wear it when you're watching them. You don't wear them while you work in an office.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he wore it, as you said, yesterday. And when I saw it, I said, hey, you've got a Leafs jersey, I've got a Wings jersey. Do you want to have a jersey bet? Because the Wings and the Leafs are playing tonight. And at first he said yes. And then I told him about the tack curse, which I'm not sure he'd ever heard about. And once I told him about that and gave him the stats behind it, the proof, he backed out. And he said no.
The proof
you know
is in
what?
the Ottawa Senators.
And right now, had he taken that bet, I would be wearing a Leafs jersey now. I would feel so dirty and awful. But the Leafs would have gone on a losing streak right after that. So Nogs
At
did
least
the
you
right
tried.
thing for the Leafs.
Yeah, at least you
Leafs
tried.
fan. That's right.
Thank you, Tack, for trying.
Yeah, that's all I
But
can do.
I was saying to Connor earlier, I don't know whether I should be hoping for the Leafs to the teams ahead of Ottawa to lose so I can pass them, or do I want to finish bottom 5 because this is a pretty strong draft year. There's some good looking prospects.
Yeah, you
And if
can't really
Ottawa
go wrong.
finishes last, they're guaranteed either McDavid or Eichel,
Yeah.
both of which would probably be one of their best
Jeez.
players
Oh, yeah.
right in their rookie season.
Well, even if they don't get Connor, even if they slack for Jack, or if they're tanking for Haffinen, whatever it is, Noah Haffinen, like it is a really, really strong draft. Those 3 players would be, I'm sure Ottawa would like to have any 3 of those. Would prefer McDavid,
Yeah.
but you can't go wrong in this draft. It's really strong.
McDavid would be like when Pittsburgh got Crosby and they
Yeah.
were one of the worst teams before that, and then
Wasn't that the year that they invented the draft lottery? Because there was so much competition for teams, like they wanted to avoid teams tanking to get Crosby, so they
Yeah,
introduced the draft lottery.
Well, because Pittsburgh tanked for Lemieux.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, they did.
And then here they go trying to avoid Pittsburgh doing the same thing, and then they get Crosby and Malkin the year after, wasn't it? Or
Malkin, they got him. He was second.
he was the second pick.
He was second. I think it was Ovechkin and then Malkin.
So Malkin was before Crosby,
Well, he didn't actually play until the year after Crosby.
because that was the lockout.
Yeah.
So Pittsburgh, yeah, right. They went from being pretty miserable to having 2 of the best players in the world on their team.
Yeah, and 2 years before they drafted Crosby, they drafted Fleury.
And they had Jordan Stahl in there, was a pretty high pick.
Yep. Yeah, but it was. You can't say it's a fact that Pittsburgh tanked to get Lemieux, but there was a documentary that I saw on it, and nobody who was in management in Pittsburgh at that time will say yes they tanked, but
Right.
nobody says that they didn't tank either. So nobody will admit to anything.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So on the topic of the draft lottery, I heard this year they've made some changes where if you don't make the playoffs, you still have a marginally slim chance of getting the first overall pick.
Yeah.
So does that mean if you come, I just want to clarify, I don't know if you guys have heard more on this than I have, probably should have researched it, but again, we're on the weekly puck off. If you come, say 17th, so 1 spot out of the playoffs, what would your chance be of getting the pick? It's got to be less than 1%.
It might be more than 1%, because I think even if you're the 30th place team, you've still got like a 0.1% chance.
Like if you finish first, you mean?
Yeah, if you finish first overall and you're like
Oh, if you, okay. I thought you
I
had to
think
miss
so.
the playoffs to get it to win the draft.
normal, to win the draft?
Well, like in order to win the draft lottery, I thought you had to finish outside the playoffs.
Oh, okay, maybe. I don't know. I'd heard that they were making.
I'm
I
not
heard
sure.
that
I'm gonna
this
research
year-
it right now because we sound like idiots.
Yeah, we do.
And
But
I
know
I'm
that
too lazy to edit this later, so I don't really want to have to go back.
this year they made some changes to make. I think the top 5, not all the top 5 teams, the 5 worst teams. They changed the odds for those teams.
Okay.
But I also heard that next year, so in the 2016 draft, the rules are going to be different from what they are for the 2015 draft.
I heard that as well.
And I think what they're doing for not the McDavid draft, but the draft after that, is that teams who even make the playoffs still have an opportunity to take
Okay.
the first overall pick.
Imagine that. Imagine if like Pittsburgh or Tampa Bay
Here we go.
somehow got McDavid.
Yeah.
That would be
Well, yeah.
unfair.
I've got the percentages here. New draft lottery odds under former allocation. Oh, okay. No, sorry, I got it. So they basically, it looks like they've made it more balanced. So prior to this season, if you finished last, you had a 25% chance of getting the first overall pick. They've reduced that to 20, and then spread the remaining percentages out across the bottom 14. So if you come 14th, you have a 1% chance of getting the first overall pick. 13th, 2%, 12, 2.5%. It kind of goes up incrementally. Then there's a bit of a jump when you get around 5th. You have an 8.5% chance. So really, it's not that huge a chance, even if you come dead last. I always was under the impression that it was strongly likely that if you came last, you got the first pick.
Well, the last 2 years, the team that finished last overall didn't get the first pick overall.
Yeah, because
They got second.
Florida wasn't last. It was, what were they, third last maybe?
I think they were second. And the year before that, well, anyways, I can't remember the teams involved, but I do remember that the teams, the last 2 years, the teams who finished in last didn't get the first overall pick.
Colorado had first last year. The year before, was it Florida that had the year before? Or was it Edmonton getting one of the Edmonton years?
No, didn't Nashville got it last year, didn't they?
Florida had it last year. Florida got Ekblad last year.
Oh, Ekblad. I'm thinking
McKinnon
of,
was the year before.
I'm thinking
Okay.
McKinnon's.
Okay, that's why I was getting
Yeah.
confused. I forgot Ekblad existed.
It's funny that Jones went before McKinnon. Like, that's funny.
You mean
Jones-
otherwise?
oh, yeah.
Other way
Yeah,
around?
Jones
Sorry.
was projected before McKinnon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, as we mentioned Ekblad, I just want to quickly touch in. Last week, I think it was, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I was trying to defend my poor choice of the Florida Panthers as a dark horse to make the playoffs. But I am rescinding that statement because they are still a dark horse to make the playoffs. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought Luongo was out long term, but he only missed 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And as long as he's on the team, I still think they have a chance of making the playoffs. They're currently above 500. They've got Ekblad, who is emerging as one of the best defensemen in the Eastern Conference, and he's 18. He gets better with every game, defensively and offensively. He's huge, and he's still young. He's going to be a franchise player for them. All they need is one or two of their forwards to start playing, and it looks like Bjugstad is doing that. So I think Florida definitely has a chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
I suppose.
As a dark horse.
As a dark horse.
I'm not saying mark your calendar for April to watch the Florida series, but there's a chance.
I've never been strong on Florida because I think they do a really poor job in developing their players. And I would like to see Ekblad do well. I mean, he's doing well now. I'd like to see him continue that for years, but I can't see it happening. They seem to really F up all of their top draft picks. And the players that the players that I can think of that have done well in Florida, Luongo, first of all, they didn't draft him; they traded for him, and Olli Jokinen. I think those are probably their top two players in history. They didn't draft either of those. So everybody else who they've drafted is not memorable.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for Huberdeau to finally break through.
Yeah.
Because he looked exceptionally good at both the World Juniors and when he was playing in the Quebec Major Junior League.
On the Sea Dogs.
Yeah, I watched him come play against the Mooseheads a few times. And there was some debate over whether McKinnon would end up passing Huberdeau skill-wise. There's not much debate now. McKinnon's been far better at a younger age. But I still think Huberdeau has a long way to go in his development because he really dropped off as soon as he made it to the NHL, which I was surprised because he seemed NHL ready when he was in junior.
And his rookie year, he did really well. But it was his sophomore year and so far this year that he
just
really
kind of hit a wall.
hasn't picked it back up again.
Yeah, so any other dark horse teams while we're on the topic of dark horses? Western Conference, any predictions? Thoughts on the Dallas Stars maybe rebounding?
I think the Stars could rebound. I think it all hinges on Lettinen. If he starts being able to stop a beach ball, then they've got a good shot.
Okay, mine's Buffalo. I'm just joking. No, I'm only joking.
You had me worried there for a second.
Maybe the Senators. There you go, Colt.
A dark horse?
Well, I wouldn't say they're.
I don't even think they qualify as a dark horse anymore.
If they pull together, because they do have good players.
Qualify as a miracle on ice.
Yeah.
I still in the East, I still think Philadelphia can turn things around.
Yes, that's a good one. I'm very surprised that they haven't turned it around yet. They've got a lot of firepower. They've got two of the guys, Giroux and Voracek, are among the league best in offensive production this year, and they still can't win.
Yeah, and even some of their other guys like Braden Shen. He's having a breakthrough year.
Yeah.
He's doing phenomenally.
Yeah. Wayne Simmons is a good player.
Yeah, exactly. And, well, I don't know, is Timonen expected back at all this year?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't checked in much on him. I thought he was kind of written off. I just remember I had him on my do not draft list when I was going through my fantasy leagues.
Yeah, it may be possible he might not play again, I guess.
I knew he was out long term.
Yeah. But they've got a lot of talent on that team.
They've got Chris Pronger.
They do.
They're still paying him.
Yeah, even though he's got another job.
Still paying his salary.
But speaking of top talent on that team, Vinny Lecavalier, one of the best in the past decade, and he's been just riding the bench.
6 points.
He's been riding the bench. I think he's sat 5 games, like maybe the last 5 games, and when he does play, he's averaging 13 minutes a game. They're doing nothing with him. Is a trade imminent? Can someone take that guy's contract? And it's not even as big as it was when he was in Tampa Bay. It's not $7 million anymore.
It's not huge. It's significantly reduced from where he was back when they were winning the Cup in 2004. Was it?
Exactly. Yeah. When they beat the Flames
10 years ago
in a heartbreaker.
Maybe the 10-year reunion of their Cup win will be, or this would be the 11th year, I guess, because this is technically the 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs. But I think Tampa Bay still looks very strong. Not number one in the East anymore because Detroit dethroned them for the time being. But, man, they look good. And Bishop's still playing well. Hedman has emerged as elite. I'd go as far as saying that.
Yeah,
I'd put him in there with... if he gets picked in the fantasy drafts next year before Carlson, I would not be surprised, as much as that breaks my heart. But, yeah, Tampa Bay, I'm liking more and more every day. I'm liking my prediction of Tampa Bay to win the Cup back in podcast number 1. For those of you viewers who have been with us since day 1.
I believe my dark horse pick, podcast number 1, was the Flames.
It might have been.
I believe it was.
Jeez.
How about that?
Although, is my prediction going to ring true now? for the December implosion. They've lost their last 2 games in a row
Yeah.
in the month of December.
Well, you got a nice one tonight against
Who-
Buffalo.
Against your favorite team, the Buffalo Sabres.
Second favorite.
I'm gonna get you a Buffalo jersey for Christmas.
Enroth on the back.
Enroth, I've been impressed by Enroth. He's stolen a few games. Like he shut out the LA Kings.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
a team that's that bad, to have the numbers that he does. I mean, I know his numbers still aren't great right now because the first, 15 games of the season, they just
Yeah.
stunk.
Just bad.
But for the last 10, he's been fantastic. Now, Cody Hodgson's got to turn things around.
Yeah.
He's been just abysmal.
They got the number 1 All-Star.
Yeah, Gergensen, we were
Gergensen.
talking about that last week. Were you here? You weren't here for the pod last week, were you?
I don't know what
We
it
had a
is.
little section on Gergensen's, and that just reminded me, Gergensen's was something that Jordan wanted us to discuss. We also had another question in that email from our buddy Jordan. Hey Jordan, thanks for listening.
Jordan.
I'm
Jordan.
sure you're listening. So he also wanted us to discuss Jean Beliveau, and I think that's probably been hit up quite a bit by the media the past couple days. So this might be old news, but I think it's worth discussing briefly. He was definitely before my time. I never got to see him play, but I know in Montreal and across all hockey clubs in the entire league, he's very well respected. A very honorable man, on and off the ice, just one of the best of all time. And what was it, 17 Stanley Cups?
I think it was 11.
It was
11 as a player,
as a player.
but he had 6 as a executive or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a total of 17, which is, or
Yeah.
maybe
I
it was
think
10.
It was 10 as a player.
10 as a player.
There's one guy that has 11.
Pocket Rocket.
Was it him?
Henri Richard had 11. He has the record, and
Yeah.
Beliveau was right behind him. I did research that. I researched it a couple weeks ago and then forgot to mention it on the podcast, I think.
All right.
So now I'm making up for lost time. Speaking of lost time, we've got enough time for maybe one more major topic. This podcast has really just been a bunch of rambling so far.
We should talk about the World Juniors coming up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Me too.
Who was it that they released? One of the NHL teams released one of their players to go.
Duclair.
Anthony
Yeah.
Duclair. I like him.
Yeah, me too.
He was one of Steve's dark horse, in a really deep fantasy league.
Yeah.
Take a chance on Duclair. He's looked pretty good for the Rangers.
Yeah, I've heard there have been rumblings that Tampa Bay may let
Drewy?
He may let Drouin go.
babe! Oh, baby!
If all the Canadian juniors were allowed to go to the World Juniors, it would be unfair. If you had Ekblad, McKinnon, Drouin.
Curtis Lazar might go from this end. They said they were thinking about it. Brian Murray was going to meet with Lazar and see what his thoughts
I
were.
feel like I'm missing someone too.
Bo Horvat.
Or him.
He might go.
Is Monahan eligible?
Yeah.
Is he 19?
I think he is. It's only
Yeah.
his second year.
Yeah.
What about Goudreau?
Is he Canadian?
No, he's older. Isn't he 22?
I don't know. You're the Calgary guy.
I'm pretty sure he's
I just know
ineligible.
well what he has in age, he lacks in size.
I think he was drafted 3 years ago.
Yeah, possibly. Anyway, that's actually a good topic to bring up. I really think that the reason Canada has struggled lately at the World Juniors, with the exception of that one year where the coach made what I thought were some pretty poor line decisions, having Nathan McKinnon on the fourth line, the first overall draft pick of that year being on the bench for the majority of the games was just ridiculous, especially when him and Drouin were both on the team and were the best duo in Canada across all junior teams. I don't know why you don't put those guys on the same line, let alone have Drouin playing on the first line and McKinnon on the fourth.
Well, there were some older guys. There were some older guys on the team.
There were, but I don't think age should come into account when you're looking at who's the most talented.
No, it shouldn't, but they may have been a little bit bigger. Some of them may have been a little bit bigger. I know McKinnon's a big guy, but he hadn't filled out quite as much at that time.
Yeah.
And experience. You had guys who were there the year before that, and it was McKinnon's first year. And I was pretty impressed with the way McKinnon played. They didn't have him on the top two lines, but they had him in a shutdown role, and I think he did his job really well.
Yeah,
He
He's
did,
unheralded.
but do you want a skill guy to be doing that, though? And if we're bringing size into the equation, McKinnon's bigger than Drouin, and Drouin was on the first line for the whole tournament.
Yeah.
So if they were going off size or experience, both guys are the same age. McKinnon's 3 or 4 inches taller, I think, than Drouin, and at the time, I mean, a case could be made now that maybe not. There's some debate over who's the better player overall, but I think at the time McKinnon was also more skilled and stronger.
Yeah, but they needed the reason that Drouin got put on the top line, they needed a winger to play, and McKinnon was the center.
Yeah.
so they couldn't just
okay.
throw him in
They
there.
wanted him at the
And-
natural
and-
position.
Yeah, Drouin was a natural. Yeah, he was a natural winger.
Okay.
That may be. I'm not really sure exactly.
Yeah.
what-
Well,
what they were
that
thinking.
coach was promptly fired, and and that was
Who?
in recent memory that was the worst experience I had viewing the World Juniors, just because I was so pissed that McKinnon wasn't playing. I was so excited to watch the kid.
Do we know who the coach is this year?
I don't.
I don't either.
I'm unaware.
But McDavid's gonna. I'm
McDavid,
excited.
his
The
hand,
cast
his
is
hand's
off.
good. His hand's good.
I'm excited.
Connor
to see that.
McDavid. Connor McDavid, everybody.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, so, what was I saying before I got off on my McKinnon rant? Oh, yeah, the reason that I think Canada hasn't done as well, I mean, we were spoiled with 5 golds in a row, but since then we haven't won, and I think a lot of that has to do with the other countries letting their players leave their professional leagues to come play in our tournament for the 2 weeks it goes on, and the NHL being selfish and holding on to those guys. I mean, not selfish, they're running a business, they want to win games, but if we could have all those players we just mentioned on our roster, just imagine how good it would be.
I think it'd be a blowout.
It'd be maybe not against the best teams, but certainly would be a
But-
favorite to win every game we played.
Yeah.
We're the favorite to win every year anyway.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine on top of that,
Yeah.
bringing in more of the best players that don't normally get the chance?
I'm interested to see Finland because they looked incredibly good last year. We don't really hear too much about a lot of these Finnish players or anybody in Europe really at the young age because we only follow the CHL until the draft kind of rolls around. But they had this one guy, Tara Vainen and Ristolainen were the two guys that I remember being really good. And just the team, they won the gold. They
in an
pounded
upset,
us.
mind you.
pounded us in the semis, and they were the better team. Like, no hard feelings towards the Finns.
Yeah.
Congrats. And I don't know if those guys are back this year. I think they're the favorite. I don't think Canada is the favorite until we can prove that we have that winning mentality again. I don't think we should be a favorite.
Do you know? You know who I'm excited to see is remember that 18-year-old that played on the Russian Olympic team.
No.
You don't? I'm pretty sure.
What was it? Kuznetsov?
I think. I don't remember his name.
I wonder if Washington will let him go. If it's Kuznetsov, Washington's been using him. I think as their 4th line center, sometimes 3rd line center.
Yeah, why wouldn't they let him go?
I'd be excited to see him too.
Like, if he's gonna be playing the 4th line, he's
Yeah.
not contributing that much to their team. So
Yeah, he's not. But well, I mean, Curtis Lazar, he's been 4th line for Ottawa. But the thing with Paul McLean's lines, they're numbered 1 through 4, but that really doesn't indicate how often any of them play because he's constantly shuffling things around. Now that the new coach is in, this might start to distinguish which lines are the big lines and which ones are the weaker lines.
Yeah.
And if Lazar doesn't fit into that top 6, I certainly hope they let him go play because he looked good last year, and I think it'd be great for his development. That's what these teams need to realize. They're getting these kids to go down and be the best players on their team and really gain that experience playing internationally in huge games in front of thousands of fans in your home country.
Yeah.
It would really do a lot for their development as players. And in the long run, I think it's actually better for them instead of keeping them in the NHL for the 6 games they might miss while they're gone.
Send McKinnon down there, let him light it up.
Yeah,
Spark him.
Colorado, come on, man.
He'll come
Send him.
back and just
Let the kid
light
play.
up the league.
Let the kid play. He'll get 3 points a game at the World Juniors.
yeah, you don't need him. You're doing
Yeah.
fine. You're
Yeah.
doing fine right now.
You guys, you're well on your way to finishing 11th.
Mhm.
That's not bad. You'll get a good chance at McDavid to play with
there you go.
McKinnon
You got
next
a
year.
3% chance.
Imagine a line with Duchesne, McDavid, and McKinnon, Colorado. That's what you could have.
Yeah.
There you go. Make it happen.
Anyway, this has been a very rambly podcast, but I enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
good.
good.
It was good.
We should probably wrap things up because we were a little bit late getting going, and without Boudrezy here, I think that we're missing a little something. I have to admit,
Yeah.
Boudrezy, we're missing him for sure because he's got the broadcasting experience where he's actually able to transition through topics,
Yeah.
whereas we're just like World Juniors, World Juniors.
Let's talk about that.
What else? The Red Wings, and then talk about them for 30 seconds, and then it ends up being the James Reimer show. So, anyway, speaking of James Reimer, I think that kind of leads into Top Cheddar for this week, because he's certainly a Top Cheddar candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a Top Cheddar / you blew it?
That was going to be my top cheddar.
Hey!
There we go. Do we need an extra top? Was he your top cheddar?
Well, no, I was just trying to segue because you told me before you were going to say James Reimer.
All right. So that did sound very natural before until I
Until that
messed it
happened,
up.
yeah, you blew it.
Until I blew it. Yeah. Reimer, got to give it to him. We talked about him before. He earned the team the 2 points, and being cold for 20 days, jumping in and beating, stonewalling a high octane team like the Red Wings. Got to give him props. I don't like it, but good for him.
Top Cheddar. My Top Cheddar is actually, it's slightly delayed, I guess, but I'm going to go with Victor Hedman because coming off the injury, there was some doubt as to whether he'd return to the pace he was on Some people thought it might have been an anomaly because he hasn't really been an elite fantasy option in the past. But to come back from injury and have 2 3-point games since then, top cheddar. I've got him on, I think, all of my fantasy teams, so I'm a little bit biased. I have him on all of my teams, and he's been great for me. Better than Carlson. So I'm not going to give Carlson you blew it because we're going to see how he does tonight against the LA Kings. But Victor Hedman, top cheddar. And do you have a you blew it lined up?
Well, I do have a you blew it. We do have to. I think we've got to mention it this week. Udrizi was mentioned that he wanted to give his you blew it to Jonathan Bernier about the whole Nelson Mandela
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, what is up with that?
Yeah, that's, I don't know, when you're invited to attend a charity event and you don't do any research on what the charity is about.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, okay, so you blew it. So we mentioned that, but
A good player on and off the ice. He said that.
I didn't realize he was at a charity event.
yeah, well, it was a game that the Toronto Raptors were putting on for to mark the 1 year anniversary of his passing. So I'm not sure if they raised money for a charity, but it was in honor of Nelson Mandela.
Oh, okay, see that, okay. At first I was thinking, that's partially the reporter's fault for asking him a completely irrelevant question after a hockey game. Like, why are you asking him about Nelson Mandela? Just a coincidence that it happens to be the day he died. How do you expect some French Canadian to be braced for a question about Nelson Mandela? But if he went to a charity event in memory of Nelson Mandela, then definitely, yes, you blew it.
Blew it. Yeah, and if I want to give one for my own, I know this happened last week, so it's a little bit outdated, but when we were doing the podcast last week, the Oilers were having that press conference, and everybody was expecting some heads to roll or something to happen. A week has passed, nothing has happened.
Yeah.
And McTavish was the one who was actually speaking at that press conference, and as far as I'm concerned, he should have been the one that lost the job.
Yeah. He hasn't done anything. He said his constant excuse was, I've only been here 18 months. Okay, well, what have you done in that time?
Yeah, do so. That's a long.
You've
that's
made a
long
couple
time.
miserable draft picks since then, because where are those players? Where's the players you've been developing since you've been the GM? Who's developing them? And where are any of your picks in the past 5 years outside the first 2 rounds? I don't know, that franchise is just, every week you could give them a you blew it about something different.
They've been rebuilding for 10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these
Well,
things
not 10, but...
No, but
these things take time. That's what they keep saying. Well, there's been many teams in that time frame who have rebuilt in 3 or 4 years and become top teams. Like you mentioned, the Chicago Blackhawks. They were bad for a little while. They had 2 or 3 good draft years, and now they've won 2 Stanley Cups since then. In the same time frame, Edmonton has remained bottom 5 in the league for each of the past, I don't know how many, probably 7 or 8 years.
I think ever since Pronger left, since they traded Pronger, the
Yeah.
team's been on the decline, and they've just gotten worse and worse and worse, it seems. So, when was that, 2007, 2008, I think, when Pronger was
Yeah,
on? We're in
I believe.
2014.
Yeah.
That's 8 years anyway.
Yep. And Edmonton, I do like the team. I like hoping for the team, but I've given up.
Yeah.
Until
Yeah.
something happens, I can't cheer for them. It's just painful to watch.
Yeah, look for Eberle to be traded.
To Ottawa.
To wherever. He's going somewhere, probably. But this is going to be a topic for maybe a future podcast. But I've heard that Taylor Hall and Nugent Hopkins are going nowhere. I mean, as in they're not being traded. And Eberle's on the block, among other
Yeah,
ones as
I
well.
heard that as well.
They keep trying to shop Yakupov is the rumor, but no one else wants him.
No.
Yeah, maybe Washington could use him. Get another Ovechkin line mate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be.
That'd be a great power play line.
Yep.
Couple of wiry Russians who don't back check.
Yeah.
Anyway, what were we saying here? We're off track
still
again.
in you blew it.
Steve, come on, we need you off the Metro Transit. And that leads into my you blew it, actually, because last week we went out to check out the Mooseheads game. They were hosting the Charlottetown Islanders, formerly known as the PEI Rocket. We beat them 5-0. Great game. Consumed several ales. We went out with a couple co-workers, checked out the bar afterwards, had some drinks. Steve caught the last bus home and texted us the next morning informing us that while he was on that bus, he fell asleep on the Metro Transit, is the public transit system in Halifax. Steve falls asleep on the bus, wakes up in a frenzy and a panic, not knowing where he is, and then he sees a couple signs or something and realizes he's in Fairview, which is towards where he lives, but he didn't know exactly where, so he yanks the cord to get off. The bus driver pulls over, he hops off and realizes he got off early. He didn't miss his stop. he got off before his stop.
Prematurely.
So then he had to walk home while he wasn't sober. I'll put it that
It
way.
was cold
And
too.
it was not warm either. So anyway, that adventure calls for you blew it. And you also blew it because you haven't even got off the bus yet.
Yeah.
Where get back to work.
Or at least call in for the next podcast.
Yeah, we need to have a phone in.
Yeah,
Speaking of
asshole.
which, I want to have an actual phone-in guest, somebody who the people have heard of, not just us, not the three men in this room plus Boudreezy. We need a phone-in interview with someone.
We need an NHL guy.
Maybe we could have someone pretend to be Crosby.
I could do that.
Oh yeah.
Noggle's good at impressions.
Yeah, he tries.
We should maybe have Noggs singing the national anthem before a podcast sometime.
He's
Noggle's,
probably singing in his Creed
Noggle's
voice.
singing is getting shut down at
Yeah,
the office.
he's being spoken to about too much singing at
Yeah.
some point. Brian, by the time you hear this podcast, you'll have been disciplined.
Yeah.
3 strikes, you're out, so you better be careful.
Yeah. I'm on my 4th.
Anyway,
I like
I think-
listening
I
to
think-
Green Sleeves every once in a while.
I think I'm the only guy with no strikes in that department.
I've been hit a few times.
Anyway, as we fade in the outro music, thanks for tuning into this discombobulated podcast. We had fun, and I hope it wasn't too bad for everybody out there. Thanks, Tack, for coming in and filling in today so we could get this done. We always appreciate having you in here. Fan favorite. You can follow him on Twitter. Oh, he doesn't have Twitter. But someday, maybe. But if you do want to follow somebody, if you're really itchy on the trigger finger for follows, hit up the Weekly Puck Off at Weekly Puck Off. It sounded like I just repeated myself. Send us emails, weeklypuckoff@gmail.com. We do answer your questions, usually within 3 weeks, once we realize that we forgot it the previous 2. Anyway,
Thank you.
yeah. And as always,
Puck off.
hey.
Filled in. Good stuff.
Now, please don't crash.
Just gonna